Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Senator Coons, Senator Ayotte, and Senator Johnson. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the sunset review process in Delaware. The comments that I'll be making today address how the Joint Sunset Committee was established in Delaware. I will also provide an overview of the sunset review process and some of our recent accomplishments. I will discuss how Delaware's Joint Sunset Committee compares to the sunset committees in other states. The Delaware General Assembly passed legislation establishing the Sunset Law in 1979. The intent of the enabling legislation was to provide a system of periodic legislative review of the state's agencies, boards, and commissions. The underlying purpose of this legislative review process was to determine the following. Is there a genuine public need for the entity under review? If the answer is yes, is that entity effectively and efficiently performing to meet the need? The Joint Sunset Committee is a bipartisan committee comprised of 10 legislators. 5 senators are appointed to serve on the committee by the Senate President Pro Tem, and 5 representatives are appointed to serve by the Speaker of the House. Of the 5 appointed from each chamber, 3 committee members are appointed from the Majority Caucus and 2 are appointed from the Minority Caucus. The chair and vice chair are chosen by the Senate President Pro Tem and the Speaker of the House. The Joint Sunset Committee is consistently reinvigorated with new members each General Assembly, who accept the challenge of leading in an environment that requires making complex and difficult decisions. The Joint Sunset Committee is tasked with guiding the sunset review process. The committee's governing statute mandates that entities can be reviewed every 6 years unless a significant and substantiated reason is provided. Sunset reviews are generally conducted over a 10 to 12-month period, commencing on or before May 30th, when entities are selected to be reviewed by the Joint Sunset Committee for the following legislative year. An entity is notified of their selection in June and generally receives the first of several questionnaires in July. The questionnaires are designed by committee staff for the purposes of conducting a comprehensive performance evaluation. The initial request for information may include diagrams showcasing the governing structure for the agency, board and commission, goal, objectives, duties, responsibilities, authority, financial information, and education, and that's just to name a few. Responses submitted to those questionnaires, as well as information obtained from researching entities in Delaware and those in other states with similar missions, are organized in a draft report. The preliminary or draft report is provided to committee members for their review and use during the public hearing, which is statutory mandated to begin on or before February 7th each year. Public hearings are scheduled and in the evening to allow for greater participation by the public. Public hearings serve as a critical component of the sunset review process. They provide an opportunity for the Joint Sunset Committee members to hear from those who are impacted the most to determine if the agency, board, or commission is protecting the public's health, safety, and welfare. At the conclusion of the Joint Sunset Committee public hearing, additional meetings are scheduled for the purpose of consideration recommendations submitted by the entity under review. The Joint Sunset Committee members, various other stakeholders, the public at large, as well as those offered by the committee members. The Joint Sunset Committee members consider each recommendation individually, and as recommendations are often adopted unanimously, which speak to the nonpartisan nature that has typically governed the way members conduct the business before the Joint Sunset Committee. At the conclusion of the Joint Sunset Committee, may recommend the continuation, the consolidation, reorganization, transfer, termination of an agency, board, or commission. The committee is mandated by statute to publish a final report on or before May 30th each year, which shall include any official action taken by the committee, adopted recommendations for the entities under review, and a schedule of the sunset reviews selected for the following year. Some of the accomplishments in the state of Delaware: we have performed 241 sunset reviews, evaluating and analyzing approximately 100 state agencies, boards, and commissions. In 2009, the Joint Sunset Committee adopted recommendations and sponsored legislation renaming the Board of Compensation Assistant Program, transferring its duties and employees to the Delaware State Department of Justice, and provided for the staff and executive director to award benefit compensation to victims based on existing criteria. In 2008, the Joint Sunset Committee staff worked with the board and commission staff and the governor's office to identify inactive gubernatorial appointed boards, councils, and commissions to be submitted to sunset review. As a result of these efforts to date, the Joint Sunset Committee has terminated 19 inactive entities by sponsoring legislation which, upon enactment, successfully eliminated them from applicable governing statutes. To speak in regards to other states, approximately half of the states have established entities with a similar purpose and function as Delaware's Joint Sunset Committee. However, the Texas Sunset Committee Advisory Commission is often used as a benchmark by which all other sunset committees across the country are measured. In a number of ways, the process in place in both Delaware and Texas are almost identical. Both state employees' specific review criteria engage in similar sunset review process, encourage greater participation from the public in the review process, and work to ensure basic recommendations are included for consideration when applicable. Two examples of a basic or standard recommendation, which Delaware and Texas both utilize, include requiring state entities to establish conflict of interest policies, as well as included language to disqualify and remove gubernatorial appointed board members from their positions when a specific criteria is met. There are some also significant and fundamental differences between Delaware Joint Sunset Committee and the Texas Sunset Advisory Committee, which have greatly impacted how both legislative committees operate today. For example, in Delaware, the number of state entities eligible for sunset review total more than 300, as the definition for eligible agency is written broadly. In Texas, approximately 130 state entities are eligible for sunset review, and each of the eligible entities enabling legislation include both the periodic sunset review requirement and a date that the entity could be abolished if legislation action is not taken. With regard to the sunset review schedule, Delaware is prohibited from conducting a sunset review within a 6-year of a prior review. Entities are selected by the committee members, and attention can be diverted to those with developing and ongoing issues that the legislator has not had the opportunity to address. In Texas, sunset reviews are conducted approximately once every 12 years. However, there is some flexibility with changing their regimen schedule and should an emergency or unexpected issues arise. With regard to action taken or required by the Sunset Committee, the Delaware Joint Sunset Committee can continue a state entity without enacting any additional legislation. In Texas, a state agency is abolished by the Sunset Advisory Commission unless the Texas legislature passes a bill to reauthorize the agency for an additional 12 years. Finally, Delaware conducts sunset reviews for approximately 4 to 6 agencies, board, or commissions each year, as the committee is staffed with a 1 full-time employee. In comparison, Texas conducts approximately 20 to 30 sunset reviews on eligible entities each year and employs 28 staffers to assist in this process. Thank you for your time, and at any point, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Senator. Dr. Rosenbloom.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to provide historical perspective on congressional efforts to improve the performance of the executive branch administrative agencies. I'll be speaking basically about my findings in the book that you mentioned, Building a Legislative-Centered Public Administration, Congress and the Administrative State, 1946 to 1999. The book was written with the assistance of Henry Hogue, Dr. Henry Hogue, who was then my doctoral assistant and now is an analyst in American national government with the Congressional Research Service. The book is about Congress's effort to reposition itself in 1946 vis-a-vis the executive branch. What had happened was that during the New Deal and World War II, Congress felt that it had been eclipsed almost entirely by the executive branch. Senator La Follette actually asked the question, how can we maintain our place in the constitutional scheme? Congressman Kefauver wrote a book, and in that book he has a chapter, Is Congress Necessary? He also suggested that Congress might not exist in another 20 years. That book was published in